Social presence, media richness, and the networked self. Assalamu alaikum. We've traveled a long road together, a signal through a wire, a circle of feedback, a self built through conversation, a society's attention, cultivated and contested, an industry manufacturing content, and audiences reading against the grain. Every single theory so far assumed one thing without question, that there is distance between sender and receiver. Communication is the act of crossing it. Today, that assumption finally breaks down completely. What happens when sender and receiver share the same infrastructure, the same interface, when the channel itself becomes a place you live in, rather than a wire you send something through? We arrive in 1970s and accelerate through the 1990s as computers moved from research labs into offices and homes, and email bulletin boards, and eventually the internet made text-based screen-mediated conversation part of daily life. Researchers needed new tools because the old broadcast models simply didn't fit this strange new hybrid. Not quite a letter, not quite a phone call, not quite a face-to-face conversation. In 1976, John Short, Eden Williams, and Bruce Crystal proposed social presence theory, asking a simple but urgent question: how does another person feel to you through a given medium? Around the same time and into the 1980s, Richard Daft and Robert Linger developed media richness theory, ranking communication channels by how much nuance, tone, facial expression, immediate feedback they could actually carry. Social presence theory argued that every medium sits somewhere on a spectrum of presence. How much a communicator feels like a real, immediate person to us. Face-to-face conversation sits at the rich end, carrying tone, expression, and timing. A text-based email sits much further toward the thin end, stripped of nearly all those cues. Media richness theory built on this with a practical implication. The right medium depends on the task. Rich face-to-face channels are well suited to ambiguous, emotionally complex, or high-stakes messages, since they can carry nuance and allow real-time clarification. Lean channels like a memo or an email are perfectly adequate, even preferable, for simple and ambiguous information. Mismatch the medium to the task, delivering devastating news by text message, for instance, and communication tends to break down or feel wrong, even if the words themselves are accurate. Later, as researchers watched people form deep, genuine relationships purely through text, Joseph Walter proposed the social information processing theory and later hyper-personal model, arguing that given enough time, people don't just tolerate lean channels, they exploit them carefully, curating an idealized self that can, in some cases, feel more intimate than face-to-face contact ever could. Sociologically, these theories describe a genuinely new kind of social space. Earlier theories assumed communication happened within existing social structures, a classroom, a broadcast hierarchy, a shared physical community. Computer-mediated communication instead builds entirely new communities, often stripped of the traditional markers, race, age, physical appearance, geography that usually organize social interaction. This gave rise to research on networked publics and online community formation, how strangers connected only by shared interest rather than shared geography build norms, hierarchies, and even intimacy through nothing but text and image. It also reopened the Frankfurt School's old question in a new form: who owns and shapes the infrastructure these communities now depend on entirely to exist? Psychologically, this raises a genuinely strange question earlier theories never had to face. What happens to identity and intimacy when so many nonverbal cues simply vanish? Symbolic interactionism told us the self is built through imagining how others see us, but what happens when others only never or ever see a carefully composed profile, a chosen photo, a message drafted and redrafted before sending? Walter's hyper-personal model suggests something almost counterintuitive. Reduced cues don't necessarily reduce connection, they can intensify it, because both sender and receiver fill the gap with idealized assumptions about each other. This connects to psychological research on selective self-presentation and the surprisingly powerful intimacy that can form in purely text-based relationships, from early internet chat rooms to modern long-distance relationships sustained almost entirely through a screen. These frameworks, too, have their limits. Critics note that ranking media on a single richness scale feels increasingly outdated in a world of video calls, voice notes, reaction emojis, and read receipts. Modern platforms have engineered new ways to stimulate presence that these original models never anticipated. The line between lean and rich media has blurred considerably. Others point out that these theories, developed mostly by studying workplace communication and early online communities, underestimate how much manipulation, deception, and performance can also travel through supposedly rich media. A face-to-face conversation can lie as easily as a text message can tell to the truth. So why does this matter today? Because you are at this very moment inside exactly the phenomena these theories try to describe. A conversation with an AI system is perhaps the strangest test yet of social presence theory. There is no face, no body, no shared physical space at all. And yet, for many people, a real sense of presence emerges anyway, built entirely from language, timing, and responsiveness. Every design choice in modern platforms, typing indicators, read receipts, voice messages, video filters, is a direct, deliberate attempt to manufacture social presence in an inherently lean text and pixel medium. The entire attention economy we discussed with the Frankfurt School is now built in large part on engineering exactly the kind of intimacy and immediacy the 1970s and 80s theories first tried to measure. So here we are at the end of a long journey. We began with a single file down a wire, assuming a passive mind. On the other end, we end with something almost unrecognizable from that starting point. Selves built through interaction, societies shaped by cultivated attention, audiences that read back and resist, and now technology so immersive that the old distinction between message and relationship barely holds anymore. What ties this entire journey together is a single thread. Sociology kept insisting that communication is never just information. It is always social structure, emotion, power, institutions, community, belonging, and psychology kept insisting that communication is never just signal. It is always meaning, built and rebuilt inside the human mind, trying to understand itself and others. Every theory we've covered is really just a different answer to the same enduring question, asked in a different era, with different tools. When one mind reaches toward another, what actually gets through, and what does the reaching do to us individually and together? As media keeps changing faster now than ever, that question isn't going away. It's simply waiting for its next theory. Thank you, and see you next time.